Hare Krishna, everyone. Welcome to this very special edition of the Hare Krishnas in Britain podcast. This is our Gora Panima special edition. And I've been searching high and low across the UK to find a guest that might be suitable. Lots of devotees are suitable to come on as the guest for this special edition. I'm pleased to welcome our guest for Gora Panima, Saranga Thakura Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Hare.
It's great to see you. I mean, physically, I saw you probably last October. I came to Scotland, which was lots of fun. There was a kind of Hare Krishna get together in Dunfermline, and we went to that. But because of the pandemic, I haven't been to Scotland as much as I'd like. So haven't been able to see the devotees in Scotland that much. Which is sad actually, because I actually really like Scotland. I really do. It's quite a nice place. So everybody, Saranga Prabhu lives in Scotland. He lives in a wonderful town called Lesmahago, which is conveniently situated right next to the motorway. I forget which motorway it is. And he M74. Wow, like that. I live near the M4, so we're 70 motorways away from each other. I'm sure it doesn't work like that. So, Saranga Prabhu, it's great to have you as the guest on the podcast today. Maybe let's just start by telling us a bit about you and where you're from.
Well, I'd like to thank you for inviting me onto the podcast, and as well, I just want to glorify actually your service. Just the having open discussions, honest discussions with people online, and I've listened to quite a few of your podcasts, and some of the ones of note, like there was Govardhan Mataji from Scarborough, and also I listened to Gadai Garangas as well, and so Govardhan Mataji, she did raise some controversial issues, about sexist abuse going on in the 70s and the 80s, and in the sampradaya of quality journalism, you've not shied away from those controversial issues, because personally, I find that transparency, honesty, openness, that's the best way. Honesty is the best policy always. Always. That's just how I operate. And so the fact that there are a lot of controversial issues in ISKCON and in ISKCON's history that a lot of people don't like to talk about, that is to the detriment of whatever hopes we have for the future for ISKCON. So the fact that you're being open and honest about these things and bringing them out into the open, you shine the light on the darkness goes. So this is how we have to operate. And also I'd like to say about how through the pandemic, through the lockdown, how the kind of not just your own podcast, but podcasts and people listening, like the Norm Ras podcast is exploded during the lockdown, and he's doing the same thing, and rather than we have a preacher on a pulpit, kind of the philosophy is there, the theology is there, explain that, but we're actually listening to people's personal stories and how they've come to Christian consciousness, and that for me it's been for me anyway, the whole lockdown was kind of like a boiling of the milk, and something that in my own community is something that has been needing to have been done for a long time, which was always been put off. We're going out there, we're trying to save everybody. We haven't got time to kind of get together ourselves and chant Hare Krishna and have a kirtan, but we just got to get out there and save everybody else. So the whole lockdown was a kind of coming together, and a boiling of the milk, people getting to know each other, I mean, I got to work with some of the other devotees who I've never really got had the opportunity to spend time with. They were working together in the gardens because they couldn't go out organizing festivals. They couldn't go out on Sankirtan. They couldn't, go anywhere. So we were together. It was great actually. It was absolutely great. It was really what we needed for our own community, and I think across the whole world as well. ISKCON devotees, Hare Krishna devotees, whether in ISKCON or not, then there were, people were, I mean, that's it, isn't it? For someone who doesn't have a devotional practice, the lockdown, it may have been hellish, nowhere to go, nothing to do. But for the, the transcendentalists, it's like, I mean, we find nothing better. There's nothing better for us than going into our little cave and just chanting Hare Krishna, and we're happy. So yeah. Thanks for inviting me on, and thanks for your service of opening up a lot of difficult topics and putting them on the table for people to think about.
Thank you for your kind words. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I'm just trying to do something to make things a little bit better. Put it like that. And some of our podcasts are quite fluffy and rosy, and some of them are not fluffy and rosy. And we've touched on some really controversial, topical social issues, around LGBT issues, trans issues, mental health, child abuse, women's rights, and it's been fantastic, and this is which episode are we now? This is episode 53 with you today. So that and I wasn't sure the podcast would last 10 episodes, and it has. And I've got people queuing up to be on it, and so yeah, I really appreciate your kind words. And I didn't know that all the way up from in Scotland that you were listening to it. Yeah. Okay, so you and I think first met like must be 7 years ago. I reckon it was a 2016 Rath Yatra in Glasgow when I first visited Les Mahago, and I can't believe that was 7 years ago. The last few years, so that's when we first met. Are you so let's kind of where are you originally from? You're not your accent isn't Scottish, is it?
No, I'm not from Scotland. Yeah, I'm from Lancashire. But yeah, this temple here is the closest. Well, I mean, it's the closest farm community to where I'm from. And when I met the devotees, like in the streets in Preston and Liverpool and Wigan and Chorley and Manchester and a lot of local towns, then they invited me to come up here. Yeah, and that's where I'm from. Yeah, Chorley. It's a famous market town in Lancashire.
Yeah. So you're from Chorley. So I think of two things when I think of Chorley. One is I see it often on the motorway signs, Chorley.
Yeah.
When I drive to Scotland, and the other thing, I think a bit of a sad anorak fact. I think the current Speaker of the House of Commons is the MP for Chorley.
Is that Lindsay Hoyle? Is it?
Yeah, I believe he's the MP.
Right, yeah.
Chorley.
He's been going a long time because he was the MP 16 years ago when I lived there. I can't.
Yeah, he's probably been there a very, very long time. So not everyone would know that, but I know the Speaker of the House of Commons is the MP for Chorley.
Wow.
Yeah. But you heard that on a Hare Krishna podcast. Yeah. What were you going to say?
No, who was that? Who was that other guy? The last Speaker of the House of Commons,
John Burko.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Officially, the speakers are neutral. They're meant to be neutral. So yeah. Lindsay Hoyle was elected as a Labour MP, but then he had to become independent or neutral to chair the House of Commons. So
I try to keep up with current affairs these days. After like 10 years in the ashram, you kind of like detach yourself from worldly events, and yeah, I mean it is kind of like living in a cave, like in a good way, because why not? Why not devote yourself to the scriptures and mantra meditation, and fully immerse yourself. Why not? Why immerse yourself in all of that and forget the world, for a few years. I recommend it for everybody, for at least 1 year, to try and clear the mind of all the rubbish.
One of the first devotees I ever met, or I think I ever met. What I mean is, I met this guy who the first ever devotee I met, or I knew was a devotee, was a guy called Indriyesh. He used to run the ISKCON Educational Services Department at the Manor, and I went there 20 years ago as a student to study ISKCON. And we were chatting. I remember one thing he said to me, which just made me think, and it was also quite funny. He said, I was a brahmachari for 10 years. And I literally turned off from the media, turned off from music, turned off from TV. When I stopped being a brahmachari and I kind of resubmerged back into the world, there was one thing that was still the same. I said, what's that? He said, Cliff Richard was still in the charts. Cliff Richard's been around for like 65 years. So some things just don't change.
Is he still going, Cliff Richard?
Yeah.
Yeah.
In his 80s. I'll be honest. I have to admit this. I watched a Cliff Richard documentary over Christmas.
Like a Navayovanam.
Yeah. And he started in 1957 before the Beatles. Yeah. And he was like 15, 16 at the time, and he's now in his 80s. Anyway, we've digressed massively talking about Cliff Richard. So the first question, which we've kind of answered, is tell us about you and where you're from. You're from Preston, in Lancashire.
No, not from Preston.
No, where are you from?
From Chorley.
Chorley, sorry. You're from Chorley. And you met the devotees in Preston.
Well, I mean, I met them all over, yeah. I did meet my first devotee in Preston outside Tommy Ball Shoes. I just jumped off the bus, 109, and then he caught me. I was only 13. Yeah, I was just 13, and he sold me a book. Coming back, yeah. So I did. The first time I met the devotees was in Preston. Pound I paid, yeah.
Well, I have to say, there's a very good Gujarati pure vegetarian restaurant in Preston called R&K. Bit of a plug there. Okay, so let's go back to, we've digressed so much. So first question, second question. So you talk about how you first met the devotees. So you were on a bus, you got off the bus.
Well, that's the first time I met a devotee, but I'd heard the mantra on one of my dad's records. My dad had this huge record collection, like loads of LPs, and first heard the mantra on one of his records. It was a Mark Bolan LP before he went electric, the Tyrannosaurus Rex. So on the end of one of these songs, he starts chanting Hare Krishna mantra. And yeah, I don't know, I was just attracted by this mantra. And I asked my dad what it was, and I think he just like kind of fobbed it off. But I met the devotees there in the towns. Got a lot of books off all the devotees. Didn't read any of them. And then I went to university, and then I was at university, and then I met in the first week, I made a friend in the like when you do you're in a new place trying to make new friends. I made a friend with one chap. We were in a lecture together about settling into university life, how to survive. And we swapped phone numbers. We started going running together around the park, Sefton Park. In the second year, he was living just around the corner. And he was getting into Hare Krishna. And then at the end of the second year, he says, Steve, he says, I'm off to join the Hare Krishnas. And I said, whoa. I said, you can't be serious, can you? And he's like, yeah, I am. I'm serious. I'm going to pack my bag. I'm going next week. And he says, and I want you to come with me. I said, no way. And so he joined. He went to join. And that's Chaitanya Vallabha. Chaitanya Vallabha, he's gone on to, rise, and and he's a famous devotee, and he's like won the marathon, and now he's the temple president in Newcastle. But yeah, so he went to join, and I thought he was mad for doing that. Um, but yeah, like he didn't graduate, so supposedly, he's not a successful person. I graduated. There's me thinking like, I've got the degree now. I'm like, I'm the bee's knees. But like after graduating, I just didn't know what to do with myself. So I was like, temping, doing agency work for a few years, doing a few manual jobs, just doing this and that, just treading water, not knowing what to do with myself. And then I bumped into him again. My dad had kicked me out of the house. I'd been unemployed for 6 months. I got back one time. All the furniture was on the street. I said to my mum, like, what's happened? What's going on? She says, your dad's a bit upset, And I think you better go stay with your sister for a couple of weeks. So, but anyway, for me, that was like a blessing in disguise. I was like, because no one likes to stick around home, like a young man, he wants to go make his way in the world. So I went to stay with my sister. I didn't just stay for 2 weeks. I ended up staying for like about 6 months, got a job, moved out, was working in Edinburgh, a woolen mill. And then I was walking along Princes Street one day. Lo and behold, who did I meet again? It was my old friend Chaitanya Vallabha. So I bumped
Wow.
in. Yeah. Like, and he was doing really well. There was me, like, down in the dumps, and he was like flying high. And they were teaching him Sanskrit. They were, he was just really happy. You could tell he was really, really happy. And he started invited us to the Namahata in Edinburgh, which at the time was in the crypt of the church at the end of Princes Street on the corner of Lothian Road. So invited me along there, and I was going there for about 2 or 3 months because I was unemployed again. I was skint, and they had lovely fruit salad with cream. So I was mainly going along for the fruit salad and cream. Javed Prabhu, God bless him, Javed, he was giving the classes. I didn't understand a single word of what he said. He went all over. But I must have taken something in, even if it's just a Bashard. Because anyway, after that, about 6 months, I had to go again. We got evicted from our house. This flat I was sharing with a couple of civil servants opposite a park in Leith. It was really nice, but we got evicted. And then I got one of my old school friends. After finishing school, he'd started working at I don't know if it's still there, Camelot theme park on the go-kart track. So he was a manager of a go-kart track in Holland, asked me if I wanted a job. So it was perfect timing. I went to Holland, and I was over there for 8 months working on the go-kart track. Pretty good job. And I did see one Hare Krishna actually in Amsterdam, who I later met. He was just cycling his bike as he went past in his orange robes. I think he was called Madhu Gopal. He came to visit Scotland, and I was in Amsterdam I worked out what year it was, like 2003 or something. And he said, well, I was the only saffron brahmachari in Amsterdam at that time. It must have been me. But I seen him go past, and I ran after him, Hare Krishna, but he'd gone. But I got back to the UK, and then I was unemployed again for another 6 months. I was going for a job interview in Wigan. Lo and behold, who did I bump into again? My old friend Chaitanya Vallabha. Couldn't believe it. So he invited me to the Namahata. This time he's in Preston, and we'd actually just moved out, so I was on a bus route. So I started going to Preston, and then 6 months later, having gone to the Namahata, I couldn't understand what they were talking about this time. And then then I moved up to work on the farm. Yeah, that's my story. Yeah,
It's quite amazing. So you kept Chaitanya Vallabha. So I think you or he had told me that story before, that you knew each other from university, and it was kind of him that might have got you into it. And what was your degree in? Remind me.
Well, that's it. Yeah, I studied philosophy.
Yeah.
Because I wanted to know the meaning of life, right? Which is a difficult question, but even in the university department, nobody had a straight answer, you know. And it wasn't until I asked a monk actually when I was in Edinburgh, and he gave me a straight answer, which is to understand who you are, understand who God is, and develop your relationship. But I was studying philosophy, and Chaitanya Vallabha, he was studying ancient history and archaeology.
Wow.
Yeah, and when he and in his reason for studying that was that he said that he kind of had a conviction that there was some kind of ancient, like, unifying civilization across the earth, you know. And we're talking about, like, you know, the pyramids, you know, in Egypt. We're talking about Mayan civilization, Aztecs in South America. He was convinced there was some kind of ancient civilization. And when he discovered Krishna consciousness, he said, "Yeah, this is it. This is what I was looking for." So then he thought, "Well, I don't need to study this anymore," and he came and he joined.
Mm. Mm.
So
So just for context, which year what year did you graduate or leave university?
Yeah, well, for me it was 2002. 2002 I graduated. Yeah.
Okay, so a lot of these things were happening around 2002 or after, you know, in terms of meeting the devotees, or you know, for a few years after that, you were bumping into Chaitanya Vallabha when he was dancing and chanting around the streets. Okay, 2002. So I've also just worked out how old you are. I think I graduated in 2005. Anyway,
42. Yeah, 42 now.
I'm 39 in July, so creeping up. So okay, so you did mention just now that you went to live on the farm, or you went up to the farm. So just so people, because some of the people listening to this might not know what you're talking about. So what are you particularly talking? You went to live in a community at a certain time. Tell us a bit about that.
Well, yeah, I mean, I was actually searching for some kind of commune, and, like, you know, like a group of people living together, working together, eating together. Yeah, that's what I was looking for. There's actually a kind of catalog you can get now. I don't think it was available back then. It's called Diggers and Dreamers, and it's a catalog of all the communities like that, you know, around the UK. So that's what I was looking for. And I first visited the Karuna Bhavan temple in 2004 for Balaram's appearance day. And at the time, they just built the walled garden. And as we drove up there with a couple of chaps from the Edinburgh Namahata, I kind of said, like, what's that? What's that over there? And they said, well, that's the walled garden they've just built that. I said, is there anybody working there at the moment? And they said, well, no, there's nobody working there. So then I thought, well, that's an opportunity for me to and not actually that I was, like, really interested in gardening, but when Chaitanya Vallabha, when he was joining, I understood that, you know, I met devotees on the street. I understood that if you were going to be a devotee, it basically meant you were going to have to go out on the street, and you know, you're meeting, you know, people you don't know, and you're, you know, approaching them, and, you know, proselytizing Hare Krishna faith, and you know, and I just thought, well, I just couldn't do that, you know. I'm not confident enough to do that. So I did actually want to get involved, but I thought, well, but I don't want to be a, you know, street dude, you know. I want to be like I want to do something else. So what else could I do? So then I saw there was an opportunity to work on the farm. And so then after I went away in 2004, I start that next summer. And then the summer after, I just kind of put my hands in the soil and started sowing some seeds, like, anywhere I could get. We got a kind of we did a bit of a guerrilla gardening. Actually, we kind of invaded, like, just a derelict piece of land in Chorley, you know, and started growing some tomatoes and some kidney beans. So I just was just trying, you know. When I was over in Holland, I got a little patch at the back of the go-kart track, trying to grow some beans, but it was very sandy. Didn't know anything at all back then. But yeah, farming, I've really got into it. gardening and reading about Varnashram and Prabhupada's ideas. And yeah, I mean, I think it's well, I mean, it is revolutionary. It's a wonderful vision. But it's, I mean, it's based on a agrarian based economy, not a market economy. So that is like whoa, that's like for the kind of the culture we're living in, the society we're living in, it's a market based economy. To try and somehow sow the seeds of a subsistence based economy where people growing for themselves, and surplus is bartered or exchanged or taken to market. That kind of different economic model. Because yeah, I mean, I'm not just interested in gardening and learning how to grow, although I have, I've been doing that for 15 years now, so there's some competency there. But the ideas behind it, I mean, yeah, I mean, I did philosophy at university, and when I got the chance to have a bit of a free reign, okay, you got your dissertation at the end of the third year, what do you want to do it about? So I started learning about a mixture of eco psychology, which is like the mental health benefits of being in nature. I started reading uh, about anarchism and communism, and about like nature worship and alienation. Marx's concept of alienation, obviously that's to do with the products produced in the factory, alienated from the workers, who then fetishize these commodities. But the concept of alienation as applied to ourselves and our relationship to the land, land alienation, and reconnecting with our spirituality through nature worship, and so like later on, a couple of years down the line, I really got into paganism and druidry. That was my reconnection with spirituality. I got really into Christianity when I was a kid. My family weren't into it. I just got really into it. I went to a Sunday school, and loved the stories of Jesus. But through my teenage years, I kind of got into drinking and smoking and all this kind of stuff, and kind of forgot all that. But then I went to university, and then the atheism and the nihilism, I mean, that was a predominant paradigm in the department. It was just be skeptical, doubt this, doubt that, doubt everything. And
that was encouraged by the lecturers, was it? The tutors?
There was just one lady who presented Christianity, but it was a kind of a weak presentation, and practically everybody else was like nihilist. So by osmosis, by association, I also took on those views, and the effect was very depressing. Like there's no hope, there's no future. The end is just, I mean, I'm going to die. The world is going to explode. There's just going to be an empty, black, vacuumous, silent nothingness. This is the ultimate reality. That's the philosophy of nihilism. But yeah, after kind of ups and downs, you have your ups, you have your downs. So I mean, you kind of hit rock bottom, and then you're on the up again. So like, yeah, bit of a roller coaster ride. But yeah, I got back into spirituality. I thought, well, there must be something more, and so I reconnected with spirituality through nature, seeing the sacred in nature. And yeah, I was just reading something really interesting about the about the history of religion in the UK, and how with the popularity of Christianity, then that beforehand, you had people who were pagans, which incidentally, it's like Hinduism and paganism are like the two sides of the I mean, basically it's the same religion, the same natural religion across the world. So you've got paganism, which deifies rivers, hills, mountains, trees, like the Ganges, like Govardhan, like Mount Kailash. Sacred rivers, sacred like the river. The River Clyde is considered in Celtic religion to be a holy river. Clyde is like the name of the god of the river. And so yeah, you've got a history of religion in the UK where Christianity comes along, and then they remove the divinity from nature and say, well, no, nature, there is no spirituality in nature anymore. God is up here, and then that leaves the forests to be chopped down and whatever else to exploit the nature, because there's no reverence there anymore. So how do we get onto that?
I was just enjoying listening to you, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, we were talking about 2004, and you went to the temple on Lord Balaram's appearance day. You saw the garden, were interested in volunteering, and then we moved on to paganism. And my brain went to something else because I was going to ask you a question, and then something else happened. So were you exploring paganism and all these other ideas whilst living at Karuna Bhavan?
Well, no, beforehand, but I joined a Druid group in Edinburgh, of which I'm still a member. And I've always maintained my membership. And that's another thing, is like I don't consider these things mutually exclusive, I consider, and I know a lot of devotees, like it's a big no-no for them. But for me, and I consider myself a Christian, I'm also a Druid, and I'm also a Hare Krishna. And I see lots of similarities between them all, and yeah,
it's fascinating. My question actually was kind of slightly different to what we were talking about, and we don't have to have a long conversation about this if you don't want to. You mentioned, well, you can if you want. You mentioned that you went to Karuna Bhavan in 2004 to then stay to live.
I just visited in 2004 for the festival. I moved in 2006 at the end of the year there, just before they started their marathon.
Did you meet, so this is my question, did you meet Balabhadra?
Oh, well, I met him twice in passing.
Okay.
Yeah, twice in passing. He returned for one lecture that he gave. He was giving the class in 2004 at Balaram Jayanti. But
I tried very hard, but I was unsuccessful. I tried very hard to secure an interview with him for my book.
Right.
But unfortunately, it never happened. But that invitation is still there if any of his disciples are listening. And I was even prepared to fly up to Scotland, not very green, to meet him, but it never happened.
Yeah, my friend Bhakti has been to visit him. He, received him well, and
yeah. So the thing is, it was suggested by I won't say any names, but it was suggested by one devotee that I just go knock on his door, but I can't do that. I can't go all the way to the town that he lives in, which I know where it is, and knock on his door. Oh, can we have a chat, please? Because he doesn't have a clue who I am, and I and I've heard that he's not in the best of health, so it might not be very appropriate.
Well, you could perhaps do that, when you're up visiting for the Krishna West program. Just knock on his door, take somebody who already knows him with you. Just knock on his door, see how he is, and see if he's willing to chat. Yeah, if through other channels of communication you don't get through to him, then just go for it. Yeah, okay. Go for it. Yeah.
I'm feeling fired up, so maybe we'll. Okay. So 2004, you first visited Karuna Bhavan. 2006, you moved in. You've been around, and it's now 20. I was about to say 2013. Then it's now 2023. Believe it or not. So your first visit was almost 20 years ago. Ironically, I first went to Bhaktivedanta Manor in 2004. So almost 20 years ago. So you've been around the Karuna Bhavan community for a long time. Tell us about some of the services that you've been involved with over that 20-year period.
Yeah, well, my first 2 years were on the farm. First year as a labourer, second year I was managing the farm because back to I'd had a year off, and then after that, well, yeah, I mean, I joined wanting to work on the farm because I knew that I didn't want to be a Sankirtan devotee. But after I'd been there a year, I started thinking, well, actually, I think I've built my confidence. I could actually do Sankirtan now. I started praying to the deities every day, like, please, I'd like to do this service. And then after another year had elapsed, then one of the Sankirtan devotees said, "Back to Steve. We want you to come out on Sankirtan." So I was like, "Yay!" So I was ready. I was ready for it. And then yeah, we did Sankirtan for a few years. Well, I mean, we call it Sankirtan, but actually we were doing street fundraising, really. I mean, like it's funny. I was just reading a book. It was Vaisheshika Prabhu. I was reading Vaisheshika Prabhu's book. I started reading it. The Our Family Business, and in the introduction, he says that there was one devotee, a brahmachari, who was a book distributor. He was at one temple in America, and he said to the temple president, "Excuse me, Prabhu, can I take the van? We want to take a book distribution party to the airport." And the temple president said, "No, no." And he said, "Please, we need the van for book distribution." And the temple president said, "No, we need it for Sankirtan." And by Sankirtan, what he meant was they were going to the football stadiums, and they were selling like baseball caps and scarves with, like, San Francisco 49ers or Dallas Cowboys. And for him, that was how the definition of the word Sankirtan had changed, So obviously Vaisheshika Prabhu points that out in the book, that book distribution is Sankirtan. So I mean, I wasn't doing straight books. We were trained to, like, use a board, tell people we're fundraising for a good cause, and pitch it like that. And then, if they give a donation, then you say, like, "Surprise, you get a free gift." And they're like, "What is this?" And they're like, and then you're like, "Well, it's a book about yoga, meditation, karma." And they're like, "I thought you were fundraising for, like, charity."
Starving children or something, and then you want to tell me about yoga.
Well, I mean, bogus lines were there as well, and that, it certainly wasn't discouraged by the leaders. It was whatever means are necessary, so yeah, I mean, I kind of, like, went along with it, and so many of us did. And I'm glad to say that now there's two devotees from Scotland who are going out, and the elder of the two, he learned his Sankirtan down at the Bhaktivedanta Manor, where they've taught him straight books. So both of them are doing straight books, which is for me is how it should be done, And it's my wife, actually, who is a stalwart, diehard straight book person, and even though the Sankirtan leaders here again and again and again tried to get her to do, like, the kind of system they had with a clipboard and write your name down and, kind of pop you down for 2 or squeeze you in for 5, these kind of lines. She was like, "No, I mean, I'm not doing that. I've got books here. I'm going to show them to people. I'm going to open them, see if they want a book, on its own merit." And so, yeah, I mean, I've started book distribution again after a few years, and I'm just happy to glorify Krishna and say, "Look, this is Krishna. He's the god of Hinduism." Even just like kind of explaining it in the terms that people understand it. I mean, we've got people here who refuse to accept that they are Hindus. Okay, quite often Prabhupada, if asked, "Are you a Hindu?" and he would kind of say, "No, no. And because then that would open up the question to say, well, what do you believe? What are you? And then of course he gets the chance to present himself, and say, well, this is what we believe, and this is who I am. But on other occasions, and I've heard that one time he was on I think there's a Harinam through Times Square in New York, and a passerby like looked at Prabhupada, and in the 70s, he's dressed in saffron, he's a monk. She was like, in shock. Oh, what are you? and Prabhupada, because they're going down the street, he just turned back. He said, Hindu monk, like that, Hindu monk. So she knew. So she wasn't like, left left in the lurch. He just Hindu monk. So yeah, it's like if people ask, I say, well, yeah, I mean, I've converted to Hinduism.
Mm.
Just
I mean, certainly Gaudiya Vaishnavism does fall under, academically, institutionally, in terms of our which box we're put in is in the Hindu box. If you study Gaudiya Vaishnavism, or in our case, in one case, ISKCON, it falls under the Hindu banner. Children or students study at school under the Hindu religious studies banner. It's kind of like saying Jehovah's Witnesses aren't Christians, but they kind of are. Not comparing us to the Jehovah's Witnesses. Jehovah's Witnesses are quite different from mainstream Christian theology, but they just about fit under the Christian banner, because they see as their principal textbook the Bible, and we see as our principal textbook, well, one of them is the Bhagavad Gita, which, okay, it's a particular translation, but Hindus generally, whether they read it or not is another issue, they follow the Bhagavad Gita, and they recognize Krishna as a supreme personality. So I broadly agree with you. I mean, I don't use the term Hindu myself, but I don't mind if others, I mean, explaining it to my mum, yes, it was easy to say, well, it's kind of a Hindu thing, and I don't eat meat, fish, eggs. And she was nodding at that. And then I said onions and garlic. Well, that's just crazy. Onion and garlic's lovely. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, well, there's obviously a lot more to it,
Yeah,
there's a lot more to it, but I mean, one thing I find, one thing I've noticed is that sometimes you ask a devotee a simple question and you want a kind of simple answer, but instead they go on and on and on. So if less somebody's actually interested to know more and ask me, oh well, can you explain it more? I'll ask, explain it if people ask. But if people don't really want to know, then I'm not going to, I'm just giving a short answer.
Yeah, and a lot of devotees will use jargon when referring to particular things, which I probably was guilty of that at one point as well in my early days, but I try to avoid jargon these days. Definitely try to avoid that. Can I ask you another question, which actually isn't on the question list that we agreed in advance? It's like a formal interview.
Well, I don't know about that.
No, it should be. It should be. It should be. It should be a nice innocent one, I hope. About 10 minutes ago, you referred to yourself as Back to Steve. So at some point in the temple, you were known as Back to Steve. You're now Saranga Thakura Prabhu. Tell us a bit about who gave you that name and when it happened.
Yeah, well, I was encouraged to take like to prostrate myself before a spiritual master, and I was very fortunate to be blessed by His Holiness Janananda Goswami, who accepted me, and like I've actually had the opportunity to go traveling with him, which I know a lot of disciples may not have, a personal relationship with their guru. And it was actually after I got initiated that I really got to know him as a person. But yeah, I mean, what happened is that I was looking to change ashram and leave the brahmachari ashram, and I started a relationship with a girl who was working in the gardens, who was showing an interest in Krishna consciousness. Unfortunately, that relationship didn't work out, and I was kind of like, oh, down in the dumps, and Gurudev kind of picked me up and said, come traveling with me, and I'll pay for your flights. So it was amazing. We went to Malaysia and Australia and New Zealand with 3 months. 3 months, and he really wanted me to see a bigger picture of ISKCON. That there's more to ISKCON than just ISKCON Scotland. He wanted to educate me and see that other temples operate in different ways and things are done differently. And I saw a whole new world of ISKCON and of devotees in Australia. So successful over there, absolutely amazing. So many. We've got about 20 restaurants on the East Coast there, and that's in a population of 20 million, Australia. So if you compare that to the UK, 60 million, you would say, well, if we were as successful in the UK as they are in Australia, we would have 60 restaurants around the UK. So incredibly successful, in Melbourne, and you got the loft programs, and so much successful preaching in New Zealand as well. Had a great time in New Zealand, distributing books in kind of car parks and on the street, and really wonderful. But I got a chance to really get to know Gurudev and see him firsthand. See how just incredibly like he's just like a soldier. Like so fixed and dedicated. There was one time when he was sick. He was really, really sick. He was like puking. He was lying on the bed, and he'd been sick for a few days, and he asked me to kind of like give him a really heavy massage. So I was like giving him this heavy massage, and it was quite clear he was not fit to go anywhere. I think he was coming out of both ends, diarrhea as well. But he had a program that night, and I went to hang up the laundry, and I left Gurudev, who's another God brother, helping out as well. Just as I was like finishing hanging up, this God brother came over and said, "Get ready, we're going to the program. Gurudev's going." I'm like, "You what? He's in bed. He's sick, But he was so determined that he really wanted to go to this little temple, and there was actually like about 40, maybe 60 devotees there. And he gave a class about the glories of the holy name. He so much wanted to share the glories of the holy name and talk about the holy name with these devotees that even in, against great personal discomfort and sickness, he was going. So for me to see that, is like, you can't really describe, just how amazing some of these devotees are. So I got the chance to wash his feet one time, and we got to sprinkle the dust, the water on my head, and that's probably the greatest blessing I've ever received.
I've met Janananda Maharaj a few times. He originally, in this material world, he's from Swindon, which is just up the road from me. I'm from Bath, and I've been to a few programs he has led in Swindon, and often I remember not many times, and a few times he told me the story about how Swindon got its name and stuff. And I remember being I think I was on a Harinam with him once in Swindon, years ago, and he even pointed out the where he was born, the house he was born in. Yeah, it was quite amazing. And certainly before I did receive initiation from the guru that I did receive initiation from, Dhanananda Maharaj was one of the ones I was kind of looking at. Yeah, thinking about receiving initiation from, but it didn't happen. Okay. I feel like you and I could chat forever because there's so much. I think you've got. I think. See, I've always seen you as quite a quiet, introvert person, but you're probably not really. And or certainly you might give that appearance, but actually you've got a lot of things to say. Someone with a degree in philosophy is, I think, quite fascinating. I mean, my degree is in comparative religion, so we did a bit of philosophy, but I struggle with philosophy. I was more into understanding the kind of sociology of religion and why religious groups do what they do based on things like that. And I encountered Krishna consciousness at university through that way. I was to study the Hare Krishnas. Let's move on to the next question. When I first met you, I think you had no children. Then I met you the next time, you had one child. And then I saw you last year and you had two children. So obviously you've become a very successful family man, which is great. And you've got a wonderful wife, beautiful daughters. And actually, when I think about, certainly in the Krishna conscious movement, you're the ideal family man. You seem like a great dad with your daughters, and we did a program with my god sister Krishna Devi in Dunfermline last October, and it was great. And you came along, and see, I've never had that desire to have children. So I guess I admire those that that have. Tell us a bit about that in terms of, what is it about being a family man that's important to you? Why did you choose to get married and have kids? It sounds like an obvious question, but a lot of devotees don't go down that route.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's true actually that a surprising number of devotee couples don't have kids, and I find that surprising. Yeah, for myself, I mean, I think I always wanted to get this, wanted to be a family man. I think even as I don't know how old, as a kid, I remember thinking like that's how I'll end up, and assume that that's what would happen. And I mean, like as a teenager, then I was like like most other teenagers, chasing after beautiful girls and all this, carry on. But I actually always struggled with forming a steady relationship with a lady, and so it was actually one of my reasons for wanting to join. I thought maybe I'll find a nice girl here, yeah, and I know that's that's not suppose that's not supposed to be a good reason to join. But yeah, that was on. I had quite a few good reasons why I thought it was a good idea to join, but that was one of them. And it wasn't actually until I spent time as a monk, and in the monk's ashram, kind of like it was explained to us, what it means, the big responsibility, what it means to get married and to be married, and to carry the weight of that of your family, of your wife and your kids, and be responsible for everything, and for everything, for everything be provided, and the facility, everything has to be done and done properly, and it should be done that way, and it has to be done that way, and really actually some of that preaching was done to put us off, not so that you don't do that. You stay a monk. The leaders, they want people to stay as monks. As a monk, you're a productive unit. there's you don't have any other engagements, but on the other hand, all of that all of those explanations, and that you could call it an education, it meant that when I said I do want to get married, I was under no illusions that okay, it's a big thing, it's not to be taken lightly. um and yeah, anyway, it was quite difficult to leave the ashram, but eventually I managed it, and I wangled and wriggled my way out. Yeah, I'm very fortunate to have met my wife, who is absolutely amazing, fantastic devotee, so fixed up, just really, just fixed on the point of distributing books, reading the books, kirtan, harinam. She lives for those things. She just, that's all she wants. If it was up to her, that was all she loves doing. And she doesn't get swayed. Which is good for me, because I need that kind of, like, someone to fix me up like that, because I'm like, I have the tendency to go off on all kinds of tangents, and like ancient history and archaeology. I can go down that rabbit hole. um but yeah, she's fantastic, and we complement each other. And that was another thing, actually, because I do consider myself to be like a kind of quite quiet, introverted, like sensitive kind of person, who's kind of like a bit creative, that kind of person. That's what I had in my mind. I thought, I want to find somebody who's similar to me, quiet, like, shy, creative, like. But my wife's the opposite. She's the exact opposite. She's kind of just bold, and just spontaneous, and yeah. So yeah, we've made a great partnership, and
How long have you been married?
well, our anniversary is coming up in a few days, and that'll be 7 years.
Wow.
7 years, yeah. um yeah, and we've had some troubles. We've had troubles, but we've soldiered on through the troubles, and like you say, we've got two beautiful daughters. And yeah, I remember when the first one popped out. And I was there at the side of the bed in the hospital. And yeah, I mean, I didn't know anything about labor. I was second when we did a natural birth at home with a pool. And that was amazing. That was totally amazing. um we kind of did a hypnobirthing course, and like educated ourselves so that we would be able to deal with it. But yeah, the Palika popped out in Wishaw Hospital, near Motherwell. And yeah, and it's a miracle. Yeah, when she popped out, I thought, this is a there is no, there's no, I mean, yeah, that was the moment. There's nothing. That was the biggest. You could call it an achievement, but the biggest moment in my life, the most amazing thing that had ever happened to me. I mean, yeah, she popped out, and I just thought, well, this is a miracle. And I felt very empowered. Like God, Krishna, God has chosen us. That God wants us to love and take care of and nurture this tiny little baby. And what a blessing. What a blessing. You can't ask for anything better, anything more than that opportunity to, like, look after and love and care for this tiny little defenseless baby. And so yeah, we're yeah, and so we're looking after Palika, we're looking after Radhika, we're homeschooling Palika. She's 5. My wife takes care of most of the homeschooling. I do a little bit as well. Radhika's 1 and about 4 months, and she's teething now. So she keeps me up at night. I'm on the night shift, so I'm looking after in the night. I was twice up last night, and sometimes it's half a dozen times all through the night. Um, but yeah, I mean, yeah, like you say, you know, a lot of Hare Krishna devotee couples don't have kids, but for me, there's nothing. You know, there has been no better thing or greater thing in life than to be able to have a family and to look after and take care of other devotees. Yeah.
And in terms of, I probably should have asked this question earlier on. In terms of families, your parents, do you, I mean, do you see them? Do you have a relationship with them? I mean, in terms of, you know, you joined the Hare Krishnas. I mean, what did they think of that? And you know, that kind of thing, really.
Yeah, yeah. My parents come and we see each other. Well, actually, almost every week or at least every fortnight. They live about an hour away. My mum has just had a new knee, so she's like, we're going over to visit her, mate, mostly just now. But yeah, my mum and dad have been supportive of me being a Hare Krishna. When I told them I was wanting to go and like, you know, move to Scotland, they were both living in Lancashire still. My sister, she'd already flown the nest and went to Heriot Watt University doing business organization and since then got a job for RBS and you know, married and had kids. So once she'd had her kids, my mum and dad were like, well, my mum was saying to my dad, you know, we need to move up. We need to move up. He was looking for jobs, doing the same job as he'd done in Lancashire. He got a job at the Haddington at the East Lothian Council there, working, doing his job. His job was to like spend the government budget to maintain schools like that. You know, that was his job. So it's a pretty good job, you know. Uh, um, he did. But yeah, so they moved up, and then I moved. My sister moved up, then I moved up, and then they moved up. So they live only an hour away, and yeah, and even when they were still living down in Lancashire, they were coming up to visit me, and I was calling them to, you know, have a chat and keep in contact with them. Yeah, yeah.
It's really good. It's encouraging to know. It seems, yeah, it's really encouraging to know. And they love being grandparents, do they? And you know, they love their granddaughters.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The grandparents that they that's they love nothing more than being having like playing with the grandkids, don't they?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. My mum's the same. I don't have kids, but one of my brothers has got two sons, and my mum and my stepdad just love being grandparents. It's like they, I wouldn't say they live for it, but they just love it. They're always buying the grandsons things. They don't they're babies, they don't need things, but they just like to buy them things. You know, I guess in our Western culture, it's a sign of showing you love someone, isn't it? Or you value something if you buy them a gift. And I'm more of an uncle that just, I'll just take them out for the day or take them out for, you know, I don't really want to buy them material things because they don't need it. But that's just a
Yeah,
me.
well, spending time
Yeah.
together is the best gift. Yeah, yeah. I mean that a lot of parents are like that, right? A lot of parents they don't have time to spend with their kids, and they get them a lot of gifts. So that like as a yeah, as a you know, not just as a Hare Krishna, but as someone who is like an alternative thinker, then you know what we're saying is you know, spend time with your kids, you know, rather than pursue a career, you know, to get money to, you know, provide a big house and a big car like for yourself and for your kids. Better to have like, this is the non-materialistic point of view. So it's supposed to be that we value the personal relationships better, higher. Live in a small cottage. I mean, that we live in we've got a two bedroomed house which we rent, you know, don't pursue a large money making career at the expense of spending time with your kids and other people. You know why? You know that's the philosophy in practice, right? But you know, anyway, yeah.
Well, that's actually why I don't want kids, because I want a large money making career. I'm joking. I'm joking. If only. Okay. Let's move on to a kind of final discussion point. Let's talk a bit about something you're doing in your kind of free time, if you've got any free time as a parent, the kind of extracurricular activity. I remember we spoke most of the pandemic's really blown my mind in terms of when I spoke to people, when I saw them, and I just can't believe the whole thing started 3 years ago. But that's just another issue. But a conversation we had last year, you said, "Oh, I'm going to write a book, or I'm doing some research for a book." Tell us a bit about that. What's the book about? How are you getting on? Because actually, again, I won't say his name because he hasn't given permission. There's another devotee living in Les Mahego that's also, oh, he's actually written a book. He actually lives just up the road from you. That's giving it away. But he came on the podcast a year ago and spoke about his book. Something about Les Mahego, where people just love to write books.
Yeah. Well, am I not allowed to mention his name either?
Go
Then,
on. Go on then. I'm
well,
sure
back to Vinod's written the gardening book.
he
Yeah,
has.
it's
Yeah.
fantastic. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's an amazing achievement, and it's a really good book as well. And
Yeah. He was
he's
asking
got the
me
new
for
one out actually. The
a
new one's out
second.
now with color
Wow.
pictures. Yeah,
Good for him.
yeah. Well, that's what to do during lockdown. Write a book.
Exactly. Everything in here. Letter 8. Letter 8.
Yeah, well, he's got yeah, he's an expert, on gardening and back to yoga, and seeing the plants as souls, spirit souls, as servants of God, servants of Krishna, and he has that understanding, and so that's what the book's about, and he's yeah, it's a great book. It's available on Amazon. You can buy it on Amazon. If you type in Brian Bhakti McCulloch, and then you get it, and it's called I think it's called Gardening the Bhakti Yoga Way. Yeah.
So tell us a bit about the book that you're writing or planning on writing, or
Sure, yeah, sure,
tell
yeah.
us a
Well,
bit about that.
your original question was what is inspiring you to write a book? I'd thought about that question,
Okay.
and so yeah, I mean, what I'm wanting to do, I mean, your Gurudev's written that book. It's available online. I want to get a hard copy, and it's about like do you know what it's called? The name of the book.
He's written quite a few books.
What about his most recent book?
The novel.
Yeah, the novel. Yeah.
Oh, it's called Justin. You've caught me off guard now.
Like Justin Smith.
And it doesn't look like a devotional book, but it is.
It's a story of an ordinary person. Yeah, see, I love stories, and yeah, I mean, I've read Bhagavad Gita a few times, and reading the Bhagavatam. So there's philosophy and there's theology, but people really relate to stories, and I once read this book. I really liked it actually. It was by Tamal Krishna Goswami, and it was a story of a devotee living in Hong Kong. I think if it was a made up story, it was just a novel that he'd written, and yeah. So that's my inspiration is to write a story. It's a fictional story about a young man who's from a kind of a mundane, boring, middle class, suburban, nothing ever happens kind of life, and he's looking for adventure.
Is it an autobiography by any chance?
No, it's fictional. Yeah, it's fictional, and he's searching around. He's into Native American shamanism, and he's into all kinds of things. And he goes on adventures in the mountains and everywhere else, and then he joins a monastery, a hilltop monastery, in Scotland, in the on top of a hill, and he joins a monastery, and he learns about like the kind of farming, getting back to nature, back to basics, how to grow food, how to look after animals. I actually went. If I kind of want to do a shout out for the farm in Bulgaria on the Black Sea coast, which is an amazing place. I kind of like. We had the European Farm Conference in 2018 here at Karuna Bhavan. But although it's called the European Farm Conference, it was just really actually the Western European Farm Conference, because the Eastern European farm people didn't come. So, but we went over to this farm in Bulgaria, and there's a couple of brothers there who've been it's one of the brothers who's the main guy actually, and his dad was a greengrocer, and he's been growing vegetables year after year after year after year, building up a business more and more, and with the profits he's built a temple and about an acre of greenhouses, but he's got a herd of cows. This is the shout out. He's got a herd of cows there. When I went the first time, he had 13 cows. The time we went previously was 17, and he's probably up to 22, 23. But you can actually go there. You can actually take the cows out. You can take the cows out. He keeps them in a little corral next to the temple overnight, and then every day, either him or somebody else, or on the occasions I was there, I took them out with him, but he left me on my own with them, like just. But that's another thing about Bulgaria is there's no fences. There's no fences in Bulgaria. For whatever reason, the farmers have never been able to afford to buy fences, so the land is open. As you imagine, England or Scotland might have been 100 or 200 years ago. So it's amazing. You drive from town to town, and you look out over into the distance, and I say to, well, what's that over there? And there's like a flock of cows, a flock of sheep or a herd of cows, and there's somebody with them, and they're the shepherd or the cow herd, So they still have that same system, and you don't, and that's what you read about in Krishna book. But even if you go to Vrindavan, you can't experience that. No, the cows are. I actually think it's quite terrible that most of the cows in India and even in ISKCON farms are just kept in a concrete like paddock, like a concrete shed, basically. There's kind of issue. People raise problems, don't they, in the UK about like grass fed, are they grass fed cows? There's a dairy up the road from us where the cows are all kept in a barn, and they don't even get to see the sunlight, and they go in and a robot milks them. But in Bulgaria, you can go out with the cows for the day, just like Krishna and Balaram, and you're looking after them. And talking about cow protection, it takes cow protection to a whole new dimension. Cow protection doesn't just mean putting them in a fenced field and paying for their upkeep. Cow protection, when you take them out, you're actually herding them, keeping them together. And one time there was a bit of a barbed wire fence just in the middle of nowhere, and one cow kind of was getting stuck on it, so I had to go along and like help the cow. So I'm actually protecting the cow, like actively, not passively, and that's another. And so anyway, yeah, I'm incorporating these experiences into the book, and putting, I'll poetic license. All these events sort of learning about farming will take place in Scotland, I think, in the book. But yeah, that's another point about cow protection, is that we have an idea of what cow protection is in the UK, but it's within the context. Our idea of cow protection in the UK is within the context of the economic the economic model, and the agricultural model of what is standard practice in the UK, which means fences. I mean, there's huge open hills in Scotland. You know, I mean, I'd love to have a herd of retired cows and just take them out for the day. Apparently, I think you can still do that. There's a place called Applecross. It's up on the west coast, and apparently, I mean, in Scotland, of all the places in the UK, then you've still got a tradition of crofting, which is a tradition of um, subsistence farming. So there's cows and sheep in places where they're left to graze. But even then, they just let them out, and then they round them up when they want them. It's not this like active process of cow protection, which is going out with them like you're reading. So anyway, like you're reading the Christian book. So anyway, if yourself, Narada, or anyone else listening wants to experience like actual going out for the day with the cows, you can take a picnic and you can sit, by a stream under a tree, and eat your picnic, and just, and it's it was. I mean, that was for me was just it was just such an amazing time just to be with those cows and like it was wonderful. And then I don't think you can do it anywhere else. There's that. See, you've got Western Europe where farming is like intensive, mechanized, like chemicalized, and then you've got like a block of east of there where farming, Romania, Georgia, these places where farming is like a more traditional and the kind of farming that was practiced in the UK maybe 200 or 300 years ago. It's like you're reading the history books and you think, wow, that sounds amazing, but then to actually do it. But the thing is, people who live there, they like maybe they don't even like recognize the value of it. I mean, it's changing now as we speak. People are giving up that way of life. They're wanting to go to the towns and the cities, as they are in India. Like the slums in Mumbai are like getting bigger and bigger. Farmers are committing suicide, aren't they? In India, they're like drinking their fertilizer. Vandana Shiva's talking out about that. Even Russell Brand's speaking out about it, isn't it? The state of farming and agriculture and global politics.
Fascinating stuff. So tell me, because you've kind of told me before we started recording that being a family man and you're great at that. It's sometimes difficult to find the time to kind of just sit down, put your ideas and thoughts on paper. I would love to read a book written by you one day. Hopefully that's a bit of motivation. So how do you think in terms of kind of publication, how's the writing going and the research and stuff, and when do you think you might be kind of ready for it to be made available?
Well, I know that it's a long process, and I've been like trying to get some kind of coaching. I've joined like a local writing group, like the Lanark writing group. There's one chap there who's got 3 books published, 3 cowboy books.
Wow.
Brian, he's about 83, and and there's a group there, so I'm going along there. I got an advert popped up on YouTube saying we will help you publish your book, and I called them up. I spoke to a guy for 20 minutes, and then he was asking for like £20,000 or something like that. But yeah.
I mean, I don't know what Bhakti did with his book. I did give him some ideas, but I won't. I'm always conscious about dropping names of companies, but I self-published through a major self-publisher. I can send you a message after and tell you, and I didn't pay any money up front at all.
I was planning to do it through Amazon.
Yeah.
Self-publish.
I did mine through Amazon. So I think my book's $7.99 and Amazon takes 3. I take 3, and the other $1.99 is for printing costs. It's very reasonable, actually.
Yeah. That's my plan. But I'm still I've not got a rough draft yet, so uh, I've got like the like the main outline of the book, which is following the I read a book about how to write a book. You might have heard of it. You might have heard of it. There's a book called The Writer's Journey by this guy called Christopher Vogler. Well, actually, you're nodding your head. You've heard of it, yeah, or read
Heard of
it?
it. I mean, I've never read it, but I've heard of it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's actually this book I read, The Jedi and the Lotus by Satyaraj Prabhu, and I read that, and that's like he's trying to connect the Star Wars, some of the most successful films of all time, with the Jedi and the Lotus, connecting it with the Ramayana. And he quotes a lot from this guy. What was his name? There's this. He's a Jungian. He's a Jungian psychologist from America. That chap Jordan Peterson. It's almost like his guru Campbell. Joseph Campbell. Yeah. So Satyaraj quotes a lot from Joseph Campbell and his ideas. He's got the book, the Hero with 1,000 Faces, I think is his book. The Hero's Journey. The Hero's Journey, and then you've got Christopher Vogler who uses that plot model, the Hero's Journey, how you can apply that to either write a book or write a script for a film. So I read his book, and so I'm following. There's a basic pattern there, and what Joseph Campbell what he was putting out was that actually a lot of myths and legends and ancient stories all seem to follow this same pattern of begin with in a kind of mundane, ordinary situation. There's some kind of call to adventure, but initially the call is refused. No, like Luke Skywalker, like Obi-Wan Kenobi says, you should, become a Jedi. No. I'm just gonna work on the farm, But then his parents are killed, and he has to go. He has to answer the call. Okay, so there's some kind of call, which is like a monk, the call to be a monk, And then so then the monk, the person starts on a bit of an adventure, and the monk. You enter a special world, where there's special rules have to be learned. You make some friends, you make some enemies, but it's a process of learning, and then it culminates in some kind of like battle or, fight, and there's some kind of conflict, and then there's a death, either like the death of some part of the self, or or a physical death. But after that, and obviously this is echoed in the story of Jesus, obviously, and then there's a rebirth, and a kind of a new person emerges with new ideas, or new, just something new. But then, according to Joseph Campbell and Christopher Vogler, then that person has to come back. They have to come back to the ordinary world to share whatever gifts, whatever boon, whatever special thing they've received, like in Tolkien, something similar going on in Tolkien, the Hobbit, the journey, you find, then they find a big jewel or something, then bring it back or something like that. And so anyway, yeah, for me, reading that and kind of understanding that and thinking, well, I was living a pretty boring, mundane life. I became a monk. I learned so much. It was amazing. But now for me, I'm at this point where okay, well, now I want to kind of share that, how do I do that? How do I kind of go back into the ordinary world and share whatever benefits I've got? How am I gonna do that? That's kind of where I'm at now. Anyway, yeah, the thing is that the book is kind of loosely based on my own experiences, and then kind of like my and like and but you know, my own whatever's going to happen to me in this life, you know, it's you know, hopefully it's not over yet, you know. I'm not exactly sure what's. So if I'm going to write this book, I'd have to make up whatever happens in the future, you know. Originally, I just wanted the book to be about going from an urban environment to a rural environment, and it was about Prabhupada's Varnashram mission. 50% of my work is left undone. It was about that. But what has happened since, and is that there have been difficulties in Scotland, in the ashram. I mean, you've talked about Balabhadra, and it's on the Dandavat's website. 2007 GBC report: physical abuse, sexual abuse, psychological abuse. That was kind of rampant, prior to 2007. And although I'd say things have improved a lot, I think there's still problems here in Scotland. So this kind of journey of like through this darkness, and how to break out of that, and I think that by being open and honest and transparent, this is the only way that these problems can be solved, and there's people in the hierarchy, in the upper echelons of ISKCON UK who don't want people to talk about these things. They want everything hush hush, no scandal, nothing controversial, and okay, that may be the way those people want to deal with it, and fair enough, they can keep their ISKCON if that's the way they want to deal with these kind of things. But I'm not part of that. I don't want to be a part of that. And I've got my life to live, and I've got my children to look after. And if people aren't going to be able to treat each other with respect and be honest, then then I'm not a member of ISKCON anymore. So that's fine. That's fine by me, and I'll do what I can to share Krishna consciousness. I'll try and distribute books. I'll try and do Harinam with my wife, and we'll try and spread peace and love and happiness. These what I consider central tenets of Krishna consciousness, which it seems other people have completely forgotten and just thrown out of the window. So yeah, the book the book is it's a work in progress, but it'll
I hope it has a happy ending.
I have faith. I have complete faith. I have complete faith in God. The happy ending has already happened, because so many of the devotees now in Scotland are opening up and talking about horrible things that have happened to them over the years, and it cannot be denied. It cannot be denied, and those who try to do that, then well.
Yeah,
karma.
Unfortunately, without mentioning names or going into detail, unfortunately, a lot of the scandals and the corruption that we see and we have seen and see in ISKCON in the UK, it happens in a lot of religious institutions and organizations, and it's kind of a sad. I'm sure a lot of psychologists could tell us that this is part of the hallmark of religious institutions. Power goes to people's heads, and I've this is the 53rd episode of the podcast, and I've been running this social media platform for 2 or 3 years, and it's got a growing following, almost 2,000 followers. And I really appreciate people tuning on a regular basis to hear what I have to say, what the guests have to say. But I haven't even got started yet telling people some of the stuff I've seen in ISKCON over the last 2 years, and some of the things that I've witnessed, which is just upsetting. It's so sad. And, one of the things that attracted me to the Hare Krishna movement almost 20 years ago was that I thought it wasn't like evangelical Christianity. And then I found out it was in so many ways. you know, and that's something I've had to come to terms with. But we're going off on another kind of tangent. But I really admire your enthusiasm and your commitment to Prabhupada. That is the important thing.
But thanks very much. But yeah, I mean, it's like Krupa Moya was speaking yesterday. We had an online sangha, and he explains, you know, if you know, ISKCON, okay, you know, it's sacrosanct, isn't it? You know, ISKCON, you know, it's like the holy institution, you know. He quotes twice. Prabhupada said to his disciples twice, if ISKCON, if it doesn't serve its purpose anymore, if it's not facilitating the sharing and spreading of Krishna consciousness, then it's defunct. It's useless. That, you know, there's other quotes from Prabhupada which say the opposite, which is often the case, you know, and you come to some kind of balanced view in between the two. But I mean, I've got a friend who's from the Gaudiya mat. So he's not initiated by an ISKCON guru, but his wife is initiated by an ISKCON guru, you know. So they're a married couple. But, you know, I mean, from his point of view, he says, you know, ISKCON is dying. It's you know, it's dead. It's a dead. I mean, you know, you've got places like the Bhaktivedanta Manor, you know, it's flourishing. It's doing really well, you know. But in other places,
well, it's flourishing.
Isn't.
It's flourishing in the sense it's serving the Indian diaspora. You know, in terms of reaching out to Westerners. And I'm going to be really blunt now, and I don't want to upset anybody when I say this. And I recognize that Prabhupada's time in the 60s and 70s is different from now. But I really strongly believe, I'm just going to say it, when Prabhupada was coming out to reach out to Westerners, he was particularly trying to reach out to the indigenous native white people of Britain, and I don't mean that in a racist way at all, because I'm one of the most liberal people you could meet. I really couldn't care less about a lot of stuff, but ultimately ISKCON wasn't set up in the West to just appeal or appease to the Indians that had migrated here. Indians are great, and it's great having India. Of course it is. It's wonderful. But in terms of the number of Western people of white heritage, or sorry, let's rephrase this, non-Indian heritage, that are taking to Krishna consciousness in the UK, that number is extremely small. I watched an initiation ceremony at Bhaktivedanta Manor online. I didn't watch the whole 2 hours, but I watched a bit of it. And the initiating guru was Radhanath Swami. So, wow, we've got 20 people being initiated. Oh, I'll tune in, you know, and I'll see if I recognize any of them, right? I recognized a few, but out of the 20 people, only one wasn't Indian or of Indian heritage, okay? And she was actually from Sweden and had flown over for the ceremony. So in terms of people people from the same background as you and I, and this is Radhanath Swami we're talking about, one of the big ones, there was nobody there. So what, you know, what I mean, you and I could do another podcast, what's going wrong. We have our ideas, but I just, yeah, Bhaktivedanta Manor, anyway, I'm
a Krishna West person as well. Hridayananda Maharaj, he came to Scotland.
I remember.
He gave his talk, and nobody could defeat him. So from that moment on, I haven't won a dhoti, apart from when I went to Mayapur. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. You know, it's hot in Mayapur. I put a dhoti on because I was too hot in trousers. But apart from that, I don't wear a dhoti, and I agree with him that it's not about changing the way you dress, changing what you eat. You know, these are cultural baggage. You know, okay, you know, in the UK, right, curries outsell fish and chips now, right? So you can serve a curry, and Indian food, people are going to love it. You know, it is attractive. You know, people will argue whether Indian culture is attractive. Yeah, but it's like there was a debate between Hridayananda Maharaj and Shiva Ram Maharaj, and Shiva Ram Maharaj was trying to argue that Indian culture is universally attractive. But like as Hridayananda Maharaj points out, how many Indian music songs are in the charts? Well, none. And and as far as dress goes, okay, well, saris are colourful and beautiful and sometimes popular for European and American ladies to wear sometimes, but for men to wear dhotis, yeah, it looks like it does look like we're like well, I mean, saffron dhotis is different because that's for some for or maybe for people who are older who saw the Hare Krishnas in the 70s, they identify that with Hare Krishna, someone in saffron. But for someone who's wearing a white dhoti, like doing the shopping in Tesco's, people just like think. I mean, look, I was stood at the bus stop in Leicester Mahago wearing my dhoti going out on Sankirtan. There was a bunch of local teenagers there, 5 or 6 lads, about 15, 16-year-old, and they were like, look at him. Like, and one of them said, like, yeah, I've heard the Hare Krishnas is pretty good, but I wouldn't join if I had to wear that. So what can you do? It's like, if you want to be successful, then you've got to do the things that make it successful. Why are you shooting yourself in the foot?
If you look at and I've said this on a few podcasts and things in the past, if you look at the success and the growth of Christianity over 2,000 years, what's made it successful, not that the message hasn't changed, that Jesus is the Son of God, come to preach God consciousness and save people from their sins. What reason why it's unsuccessful is because the way the message is presented has adapted and changed according to time, place, and circumstance, country by country, or now denomination by denomination. And that's how Christianity has been so successful. Because I'm from kind of Methodist working class Christian background in Somerset, so the type of Christianity I experienced as a child and a teenager is very different from the Christianity they experience in Eastern Russia or in the central parts of the continent of Africa. The message is still the same. Jesus is the Son of God, come to save us from our sins, but the way we're experiencing it is different. And Gaudiya Vaishnavism has got to, and it is in parts, but it's got to wake up to this reality that, like you said, not everybody's going to wear a dhoti, not everywhere is going to wear face paint or tilak, not everyone wants to get up at 5 o'clock or 4 o'clock in the morning, I mean, I use my stepdad as an example. My stepdad is a white working class guy. He voted to leave the EU because he wants his country back. He will never in a million years join the Hare Krishnas if he thinks he's got to wear some bizarre clothes, but he might come around to the idea that actually there is life after death and we're not the body and we have bad experiences in this physical experience and there's something good or better greater on. He might come around to that, but he'll never wear fancy clothes or start calling women Mataji. It's the last thing he's going to do.
Yeah, the cultural things, they're like subservient, aren't they, to the what are the essential parts? Yeah, the principles and the details and things like that. Understanding the principles. But in terms, it's a big principle, right? Is ISKCON as an institution, right? And what I mean, what I can see is that in places where it's not institutionalized, that I mean, I've been on the street doing books for a good few years, like 8 years. So quite often you come up against the challenge, like, oh, I don't support organized religion, and a lot of people, they don't like any kind of organized religion, and I don't either anymore. I don't like organized religion anymore. So that's me, I'm finished with organized religion. And like the institution for me doesn't serve its purpose anymore, and it's time to informalize and just from person to person, off my own back. I'm not representing any institution. I want to Krishna has helped me. Krishna is in my heart. I want to share that love, that compassion, that mercy with other people because because I've benefited from it, and I want to share that benefit with others. But I'm not tapping anybody into an institution where I've suffered myself, have suffered quite a lot of abuse. Because I don't want other people to suffer that same abuse. And so I'm in Scotland. We're trying to share Krishna consciousness with others. I'm trying to do it separate from the institution. And yeah, like you can look at other places, like in Russia, right? It's really popular in Russia. And partly they were never allowed to build a temple, so they had to just do it. They had to share in namahatas in other people's homes. See, we've learned a lot. We've got a group of Ukrainians who've come over, and obviously they're refugees, but they've been teaching us like how it is that they're successful over there. Well, of course they've got Niranjan Swami, who's their GBC, who's written the book Taking Care of Krishna's Devotees. So he understands, the first thing is to look after the people, look after them and care for them and, educate them and love them and just like this, not like, what can we get out of these people? How much money can we get? Like exploitation, an attitude of exploitation, for the sake of the institution. Let's do what we can for the sake of the institution. Well, it's counterproductive. You can see in Russia and Ukraine, it's expanded so much. It's informalized. It's in people's homes, and then the same in the Middle East as well with the Bhakti Vriksha groups. They weren't allowed to build a temple. Of course, an institution, it's often associated with like an impressive building. This is the institution. And this is the temple, you come in here, you've got to follow certain rules, like don't sit with your back to the deities and, don't do this and don't do that. And a lot of, from my own experience, is a lot of chastisements, just, doing everything wrong. And so many, I've seen so many other people put off because of it. And they've just turned and gone, whereas if you take away the well, of course it's nice to have a temple to worship the deity and have kirtan, a hall where you can have kirtan in a large group. Okay, that's nice. And we've put a lot into the temple here. We've done a lot of fundraising, put a lot of money in, and done so much hard work to build the temple here in Scotland, the temple and the farm. I mean, a lot of people go there and they leave and they get a bad impression, and that's the feedback. That's the feedback I got. I was the farm manager there for 3 years, and a lot of the feedback was they had like a bad impression. So things need to change. But will they?
Well, maybe when it's more suitable to do so, we'll do another podcast about that later in the year when we're able to talk about such matters. But yeah, I in one sense I've had a bit of an easy ride in ISKCON. I've never really experienced chastisement. Never really, I've kind of done easy, never been forced to clean toilets and stuff like that. But I have seen corruption. I have seen, inappropriate use of charity funds. I've seen people wearing saffron, living fake lives, and what they get up to in their private life. So I've seen a lot of that too. Thankfully, it hasn't put me off of Krishna consciousness. It's actually spurred me on to try and make a difference. I'm one of these kind of people, I say activists. That kind of implies I'm some kind of left-wing thingy. I'm not necessarily, but I'm kind of, I guess, a spiritual activist. I'm determined to try and make a difference. And just because the people that are leading or in positions of authority are corrupt, you know, that's not going to get in my way of following Prabhupada and distributing Prabhupada's books. And, you know, I've met some wonderful devotees outside of ISKCON over the last 3 years. And in ISKCON, of course. And of course, there's differences of opinion, semantically and philosophically, what we mean by outside of ISKCON. There's an institutional answer for that, but that's actually, but you know what I mean in terms of, you know, taking initiation from someone who's not recognized as an ISKCON guru. Yeah, and I've had some wonderful exchanges with a lot of devotees over the last couple of years. I'm conscious of the time, and we've actually been chatting for 2 hours.
Oh, great. Great.
You and I have been chatting for 2 hours, and you and I had a chat before, so before we started recording the podcast. And I remember I said to you 2 hours ago, the longest ever podcast I did was 2.5 hours, and we're actually creeping up to that because I've been so engaged by your bookshelf behind you. No, I'm joking. Trying to read every book.
But so Kripa Moya Prabhu, and I, I really like Kripa Moya Prabhu, because well, one thing he said is that more and more devotees are starting their own projects, you know, just off their own back, starting their own project, whether it's a cafe or whatever it is, you know, a prasadam distribution at festivals project, whatever it is, you know, they're doing something to spread Krishna consciousness, but they're not doing it in liaison with the GBT, and you know, they're just doing it, you know. And he says that's the future, you know, that's the future, because like you say, you know, there is a lot of corruption, and that's like, you know, holding things back, you know. But you know, I really like Kumar because he's intelligent, and he uses his brain, and he thinks about stuff, and he understands the principles, and that's what he explains. Whereas I find a lot of other people, they don't do that. They don't think for themselves. They don't use their brain, and they just kind of like go along with things, you know. And they well, you could call them institutionalized people, and it's sad. It's sad, you know, to see people like that. And I do what I can to help them, but you know, if people don't want to be helped, what can you do? But yeah. Like Lord Chaitanya says, you know, Krishna consciousness will spread despite the devotees.
I like that. I like that a lot. Well, Saranga Prabhu, we've been chatting for 2 hours. This is fantastic. You and I can have a very brief debrief after, if you want, after I've stopped recording the podcast. But I
want to apologize. I want to apologize if I've offended anybody with anything I've said. You know, no, I don't intend to like offend anybody. I mean, I only have the best intentions towards everyone, really, you know, and I don't wish harm upon anybody. I you know, I wish everyone, you know, everybody involved in the Scottish Yatra. I wish everybody all success in Krishna consciousness. I wish everybody to be happy and successful in their lives. And you know, that's my only desire, really, you know.
And that's a good desire to have. We want good for the common man and woman. So I'm going to say goodbye to everyone watching and listening at home. Yeah. So thank you to Saranga Prabhu for being the guest this week. The special Gaurapanima broadcast of the Hare Krishnas in Britain podcast. If you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, please do share the link. Please do put a positive comment. If you are watching it on Facebook, you can like, love, or care for it. You can get angry about it too, but we hope that you won't. And yeah, please do, you know, send us some feedback. I'm always keen to receive feedback. And even though I've got a waiting list now of guests coming up, if you do want to be a guest on the Hare Krishnas in Britain podcast, which is produced by the Hare Krishna Project, please do get in touch. One of the most common things that I hear from people when I say, well, do you want to be a guest? They say, oh, I'm not qualified. I say, well, I haven't got a qualification in broadcasting either, but I managed to do it, you know, and everyone's got a story to tell. Everyone, you know, came from somewhere and got involved with Krishna consciousness. Whatever your story is, tell it. Hopefully you feel confident enough to. So until our next broadcast, we'll see you all soon. Thank you. Hare Krishna.